Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. It was supposed to be my reset button. A week in the woods. No phone. No internet. No people. Just me and nature. Maybe some books and a few long walks to help me forget the mess I left back in Portland. My name's Daniel, 32 years old, former fiance, former optimist. I guess I thought if I got far enough into the trees, I could finally start breathing again. I picked a spot in Oregon's backcountry I'd read about in an old trail guide. Hollow Bend, they called it. Sounded peaceful. Isolated, and best of all, completely off-grid. I parked my car off a forgotten dirt road, strapped on my pack, and hiked about 4 miles deep before settling near a mossy ridge with a nice view of the valley. It was perfect. Too perfect, maybe, but I didn't care. I pitched my tent, boiled some rice and beans, read a few chapters of a dog-eared paperback, and fell asleep listening to the wind sliding through the trees. The first night was quiet. Still, that kind of silence you only hear when you're too far from civilization. Not even bugs, just wind and forest. But the second night, that's when things changed. It was around 2 a.m. I woke up needing to pee, but something made me freeze before I unzipped the tent. I didn't know what at first. Just a feeling like my body had sent something my brain hadn't caught up with yet. Then I heard it. Crunching. Soft, deliberate footsteps outside my tent, moving in the leaves. Slow, like someone was walking in a circle around me. Now, I've been camping since I was a kid. I know what a deer sounds like. I know what a raccoon sounds like. This wasn't that. This was 2 feet. Then the footsteps stopped. Right behind me. No sound. No motion. Just breathing. Shallow and wet, like someone was standing inches from the thin nylon wall. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. My heart was jackhammering in my chest, and every inch of me screamed run. But I knew if I made a sound, it would know I was awake. I lay there, frozen, listening to that breathing for what felt like forever. It went on and on. Then nothing. No footsteps. No breathing. Just dead silence. I waited another hour before daring to sit up. My legs were numb. My hands were shaking. I gripped my little camping knife, like that would have done a damn thing, and waited until dawn. When the sun finally came up, I crawled out of the tent on stiff legs and looked around. That's when I saw the footprints. They were all over the campsite. No boots, no shoes, just bare human feet, dirty and wide, circling the tent like a shark around a drowning man. Some of the prints looked fresh. Some were smeared like whoever, or whatever, had been crawling. But what made my stomach twist into a knot was what was hanging above my tent. A figure made from twigs and vines, tied together with some kind of animal sinew. It looked like a little man, maybe 6 inches tall, arms outstretched like it was reaching for something. It swung slightly in the morning breeze, creaking softly as it turned. I yanked it down and tossed it as far into the woods as I could, then packed up faster than I ever have in my life. I started the hike back toward the road, checking over my shoulder every few minutes. I never saw anyone. Not then. But when I got to the ridge line and turned for one last look at the spot, some part of me needing closure, I saw him. Standing halfway between the trees and my old camp was a man. He was naked, his body smeared with dirt and streaks of something darker. His hair was long and matted. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, half in shadow, and smiled. It wasn't a grin. It was something else, something broken, something hungry. I don't remember running, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, I was back in my car, keys trembling in my hand, engine roaring as I tore back toward town. I told myself it was some sick mountain drifter, someone living off the grid, playing games with hikers. But deep down, I don't believe that, because that thing I saw, his eyes, they weren't right. They were too wide, too black, like there was no soul behind them. And sometimes, when I'm walking alone, I still get that feeling, the one I had that night, right before I woke up, like something standing just behind me, breathing. Story 2. 2 summers ago, my cousin Max and I went camping in the Chattahoochee National Forest. We were chasing the kind of peace you can't find in the city, the kind that hums in the trees and hides in the wind, just far enough away from cell towers and noisy neighbors. Max had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and well, I was tired. Tired of work, of people, of everything. I needed quiet. We got there later than planned. The sun was already ducking behind the tall Georgia pines as we pulled off a narrow gravel road that looked more like a forgotten trail. I remember how the sky looked like someone had taken a match to cotton candy. Soft, pink, and about to burn. We found a decent spot by an old creek. Real postcard stuff. The water was dark and slow, lined with mossy stones and gnarled tree roots. There was no one around, not even another car, just us and the bugs in the trees. We'd barely unpacked the tent when an old man came walking down the trail, a limp in his step and a mutt trotting behind him. He didn't look like he belonged to the forest. He looked like the forest belonged to him. He stopped, scratched his dog behind the ears, and looked at us for a long moment. Then he said, "Don't stay near the old creek after dark. Strange things happen there." Max laughed. "You mean ghost stories?" The old man didn't laugh back. "Not stories, just strange things, especially if you hear crying." He pointed a crooked finger at the trees. "If you hear her, don't follow the sound. Doesn't matter what she says." Then he tipped his hat, called to his dog, and walked off, disappearing into the dusk like smoke. We didn't take him seriously. Why would we? He was probably just some local who liked messing with tourists. Or maybe he meant wild animals. Bears, coyotes, whatever. By midnight, we were still sitting by the fire, half a bottle of whiskey between us, watching the flames eat the night. The forest was dark as pitch, but peaceful, quiet in that heavy way that makes your ears ring a little. Then we heard it, a woman crying, soft at first, like it was far away, muffled, like someone trying not to be heard, but also begging to be found. Max sat up straight. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, throat tight. The crying came again. Closer. Max grabbed the flashlight. Someone might be hurt. I didn't want to go. My stomach had already tied itself into 1,000 cold knots. "It could be an animal," I said, "or a prank." But Max had that look in his eye, the one that said he needed something to focus on, some way to be a hero. "Just wait here," he said. "I'll check it out. 2 minutes tops." I should have stopped him. Should have told him what I was feeling wasn't fear, it was warning. But I let him go. I watched his flashlight beam cut through the trees, bouncing off trunks and branches until it disappeared. The crying faded with him, then it stopped altogether. I waited. Minutes passed. Too many. I called out. Nothing. I yelled his name. The woods swallowed my voice like it had teeth. So I grabbed my own flashlight and followed the path he'd taken. The trees closed in around me like they were leaning in to listen. Everything felt wrong. The air was too still. The ground too soft. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting. Half a mile in, I found his flashlight, lying on the ground, still on, still flickering. I picked it up and whispered his name. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Max stood there. Or it looked like Max. Same clothes. Same height. But his face, God, his face, was pale, too pale, like blood had stopped flowing hours ago. His eyes were wide and glassy, like he was seeing something I couldn't. And he was smiling. Not a normal smile. This was stretched and wrong, like someone had carved it into his face with a dull knife. He stepped toward me. "She wants you to." His voice wasn't his. It was like someone else was speaking through his throat, pushing the words out like they didn't quite fit. I ran. I dropped the flashlight and ran like my legs weren't mine. I tripped over roots, tore my hands open on branches, crashed through the trees like an animal being hunted. I didn't stop until I saw the ranger station lights on the edge of the park road. I didn't care if they thought I was crazy. I just kept screaming his name and telling them he was gone. They searched for days, brought dogs, drones, even divers for the creek. Nothing. Not a piece of clothing. Not a footprint. Just gone. 3 weeks later, another group of campers went out near the same creek. One of them left their phone recording overnight, trying to catch out calls. Instead, they caught a voice. Max's voice. Whispering, begging, crying for help. Sometimes I still hear it. In dreams, or when it rains. The crying starts faint, then it gets louder, and I hear him say it again. "She wants you to." I don't go into the woods anymore. I don't even go near trees when it gets dark. Story 3. In the summer of 2019, I joined a hiking trip through the Adirondacks with a group of 6. It was one of those off-the-grid excursions. No cell service, no GPS, just backpacks, old maps, and a weather guide named Hank who looked like he'd seen more winters than he cared to count. He walked with a slight limp, the kind that comes from either a bad fall or a worse story. We never asked. We hiked for days, through dense woods where sunlight barely touched the ground, past creeks that whispered like secrets. There was a kind of peace in that silence, the kind that makes you forget the noise of your everyday life. But I also believe now, after everything, that deep silence is where things wait. It was the 4th day when the storm hit. No warning. The skies just split open with thunder, so loud it felt like something ancient was waking up. Rain pounded down in sheets, and wind tore through the trees like it was angry. Hank called out over the roar of the storm, motioning for us to veer off the trail and set up camp in a small clearing he found near a rock face. Said we'd be safer there, that it was a less familiar patch, but we didn't have a choice. We got our tents up, more or less, and huddled in as the storm screamed around us. I couldn't sleep. The wind made it sound like voices were moving through the trees. Not yelling, just whispering, and the rain never stopped. Sometime after midnight, I crawled out of my tent to take a leak. Everyone else seemed to be out cold, or at least quiet. My boots squelched in the mud as I moved a bit away from the camp. I didn't want to go far, but the woods pulled at me. Don't ask why. Curiosity is a funny thing. It's quiet and innocent until it becomes dangerous. That's when I saw it. A flicker of orange light, like an old lantern swaying behind the trees. At first I thought it was someone from our group with a flashlight, but the light was too dim, too warm, and it moved like it was being carried. I hesitated, told myself to turn back, but I stepped forward instead, and then another step. Before I knew it, I was 10 minutes into the woods, soaked to the bone, my breath fogging in the cold. That's when I saw the cabin. It looked forgotten, slumped against the trees like it had given up a long time ago. The shutters were hanging crooked on rusted hinges. The door sagged in its frame. The wood was black with mold, and the roof looked like it could cave in any second. But the light was inside. I stood there a long time. I remember my heart pounding. I wasn't afraid yet. Not the right kind of afraid, anyway. It was more like that weird pull you get when you see something that doesn't belong, like a car wreck or an open grave. I called out. My voice sounded too small. No response. I should have left. God knows I should have left. But I stepped in. The door creaked like something alive and old. The air inside smelled like wet rot and dust, and something else, something sour. There were no chairs, no furniture, no fireplace, just walls, and they were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. They were all black and white, grainy, old. Every single photo showed people camping. Tents in the background, smiles frozen on faces. Some were asleep, some sitting by fires, some looking directly at the camera. And then I noticed a pattern. None of them were looking happy. Even the ones smiling, their eyes looked wrong, empty, hollow. Then I saw one photo that stopped my heart. It was our group, my group, taken earlier that day. I recognized my red jacket, the same one I was wearing. We were sitting by the creek, laughing. But in the photo, we weren't laughing. We were all staring straight ahead, eyes wide, faces blank. I stared at it so long I didn't hear the floor creak behind me. That's when I heard the whisper. Smile. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was soft, playful, like someone behind me thought this was all a joke. I turned around so fast I nearly slipped. No one was there, but the door was closed. I didn't remember closing it. I ran, didn't look back. Branches clawed at my face. Rain soaked me to the skin, and I didn't stop until I crashed through the brush and into our camp like a madman. My tent was there. Everyone else still asleep. I shook Hank awake, breathless, panicked. I told him what I saw. The cabin, the photos, the whisper. His face drained of color before I even finished. There's no cabin out here, he said. I told him I saw it with my own eyes. He shook his head, slower this time. There was a cabin. 5 years ago. Some old trapper lived there, they say. Liked to take photos of people who passed through. Friendly guy at first, but something broke in him. What happened? Lightning hit the place, burned it to the ground. Fire crews found melted camera equipment, burnt film, and bones. A lot of bones. They said it was an accident, but people still see lights out here, still hear voices. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the dying fire, watching the woods like they might come alive. The next morning, I made the rest of the hike in silence. Didn't tell the others. Didn't talk about it again. But here's the part that keeps me up now, years later. A week after we got home, someone mailed me a photo. No return address. No note. Just a black and white photo of me, standing in front of that damn cabin, eyes wide, mouth curled into a smile I know I wasn't making. I don't camp anymore.